push this out. E3 edition. Guys, E3 happened. We were marketed to. We're all sheep. We're gonna woke you. We're gonna wake you.
We're going to tell you why all the games you're excited for are actually bad and why you're wrong.
Video games are bad, and I'm
Here's
just
why you
really
need to
down
hate
on
video
them
games.
lately. I'm just really down on video games lately. Skip. I'm a big boy now.
Yeah.
I
Work
started
got you
my
all
9 to
tired and
5,
stuff?
yep, except it's not a 9 to 5. It's an 8:30 to 5:30.
Yeah, it's never 9 to 5.
And
Well, actually, my job's like that, but...
well, fucking kill yourself, huh? And plus it's an hour drive each way. So, long days, but it's worth it. I was only able to play one game, really, and it's a game that came out of nowhere yesterday. Rhythm Heaven Mega Mix. After getting absolutely no information about a release date or anything.
It was only announced like a couple months ago, right?
Yeah, it was announced for North America just a couple months ago, and they gave no other information about it. Not even like a target window of when in 2016 they'd release it. And I was a little worried when they didn't say anything about it the day that they showed the Zelda game, but they just dropped it out of the blue as a download yesterday. And that just, it made my week, man. Like, I got to work early today, so I was just sitting in the parking garage, and I played me some rhythm games. It's a really fun game, and it's exactly what I needed, a nice little pick-me-up.
Yeah.
And, you know, each day feels a little shorter than the last one. I'm getting used to it, and it's not so bad. But
What you do is you play video games while you're at work.
that is a terrible idea. But I would really like to do that, and I really would like to talk about some video games. So what have you been up to? You've been playing some video games.
I have been playing a couple video games. Before we get to E3, out of nowhere, I kind of just decided I would pick up Wolfenstein, the New Order.
New Order.
Yeah, it's all right. I mean, it starts out like really good actually. Like it starts out with like this crazy D-Day style thing, where everything is completely absurd in Wolfenstein fashion, and then it goes into the future. So it goes from like 1946 to 1960 something, and the Nazis have taken over the world.
Yep, that's a cool premise.
Yeah, and so you're having to like be part of the rebellion against the Nazis, and it's slowed down a little bit, but I'm enjoying it. It's fun. I played. Was it Return to Castle Wolfenstein?
I played the first Wolfenstein 3D.
I didn't play the
That's an
old
old
stuff.
ass game.
I played. There was one on the original Xbox that I played as a wee lad.
I think that one was a lame one.
Yeah,
if I remember right.
I heard people don't like it, but I was
good.
too young to know any better, and so I liked it. You could kick people in it, and you could kick over and over really fast. So it was a lot of fun.
Well, you like a lot of weird games when you are too young to tell the
Exactly. When you're a
difference.
kid, you just latch onto the weirdest shit.
I remember playing the Perfect Dark Zero demo on my Xbox
Hey,
360,
I
and
still
at the
think
time,
that gets more shit than it deserves.
those
The multiplayer
graphics-
was cool.
those graphics were so impressive to me.
Yeah.
because I didn't have a gaming
I think
PC.
that was that like a launch game with the Xbox?
It was. It
Yeah.
was. It was an Xbox 360.
I remember.
launch
I mean,
game.
I remember playing that multiplayer with some friends and having a blast. It was just like really unique and weird at the time, especially for a console player. I think it was just. It didn't like blow us away, but we were just having a lot of fun with it. There were a lot of like unique weapons and large maps with some interesting stuff going on. I have no idea how the single player was, but yeah, I think that game gets shit on a little more than it probably deserves because it was unique. But anyway, I mean, that's a big name to draw a sequel from because the original was so iconic to a lot of people. But still, so yeah, I'm enjoying Wolfenstein. It kind of surprises me how old it feels. Like they've retained so many classic things of like picking up health packs and armor packs and it's just weird. And then they incorporate some modern stuff like some fairly I won't say advanced, but like usable stealth mechanics and aiming down the sights and that kind of thing, which is kind of weird. But it works. It's fun. It's just a good romp so far. I'm surprised at how like fleshed out the story is so far. Like the main character is actually
I
a
heard
character.
it's like a fun action movie.
Yeah, it's like a yeah. I mean, that's the vibe I'm getting right now. Is yeah, like it moves pretty fast, especially at the beginning, and you've got lots of characters, and they're saying a lot of stuff to each other, and there's an actual story building, which I didn't really expect from a Wolfenstein game. Like I expected it to be very minimal, but it's actually pretty well done. Lots of cutscenes and stuff. I don't know, it's weird, but yeah, I'm liking it. It's been sitting in my Steam library for a while, so I just decided, all right, it's time to play it. And I've been playing a little more.
That Doom demo. That reminds me. Before the week is out, I gotta play that.
I need to. I'm gonna wait for that game to go on sale, but like that's gonna be a good game. I'm looking forward to playing that one. And I've been playing a little bit more of the Witcher 3 expansion. There's not much to say about that. It's good, and that's all I have to say.
2 thumbs up.
Yeah.
Well, let's talk about E3, Skippy.
Let's.
Guys, E3 happened. It was a total disaster. Everything was shit. The entire thing was shit.
So hard.
I was cringing the whole time.
I mean, it is fun to make fun of E3, and
and
there are a lot of cringy things that happen. But I do think, judging from like the response on Twitter and stuff, people just go to the extremes. And I mean, I know that's part of the fun, but
there's people going looking for that.
Yeah, there's a lot of undeserved negativity, and I think there's a lot of undeserved positivity too. But yeah, I mean, it's E3. Whatever. Fuck it. Have fun with it.
Basically, E3 is the greatest injustice of our time. Lots of undeserved things. Both sides. No one is innocent.
Let's jump right in.
Okay, so let's go conference by conference.
Yeah. Let's start out with
the star-studded Battlefield 1 world premiere.
Yeah, I mean, the EA conference, which basically was just sports games and Battlefield. Well, there was Titanfall 2, which actually looks decent, but
looks like
Titanfall, I mean, whatever, it's Titanfall. Yeah. Battlefield 1.
Okay, so where do you start? Let's start with the celebrities. How about that?
Zac Efron and Jamie Foxx.
The way they unveiled it all, was that the first shot they showed of the celebrities? Is just randomly Zac Efron and Jamie Foxx?
Yeah, well,
because I'm pretty sure it was.
I mean, I don't know if they announced it beforehand or if they were like, "Hey, these guys are voicing characters in the game." I still don't know what the fuck their involvement is, if there's any involvement.
No, it's just a promotion.
But yeah, they showed the trailer.
No,
and then.
Wait, you mean right after the trailer where they just cut to them awkwardly for like a second? Yeah, that was so strange. I didn't know what was happening when that first.
It was like they showed the trailer and then they go up to the balcony or something in the auditorium.
Yeah,
and there's Zac Efron and Jamie Foxx, and they don't introduce them for like.
They don't say
30
anything.
Seconds.
They don't say anything in that
and you're looking
shot.
at him going like, "Is that Zac Efron and Jamie Foxx?" And then he finally introduces them and says like, "What do you guys think?" And they're like. He's like, "Are you excited?" And they're like,
yeah,
we're really
ready to go.
Yeah, Battlefield.
Gonna bring the hemp and the courage. And then we gotta find Wiz Khalifa to make the rest of this show go a little bit easier.
Yeah, well, that's when. So after the conference, then you've got the red carpet of celebs. And they're rolling them out one by one. And again,
the Battlefield-themed orange carpet.
Yeah, and again, they don't say beforehand that they're going to be rolling out all these celebrities. It's just you cut to this guy, and he starts bringing out people, sports people. What's his name? A big NFL wide receiver, I think, and
is a
Snoop
cornerback.
Dogg and Wiz Khalifa, and just one after the other. And you're sitting there going like, what the fuck are all these people doing here? Like, I know it's LA, and I guess that's what you do when you're in LA is like you invite all the celebrities to your event.
It was Richard Sherman.
Richard Sherman.
There was an NBA player.
Terry Crews.
Yeah, Terry Crews was there. He was the PC Master Race.
He said he's playing with a keyboard and mouse.
Meanwhile, everybody else was sitting there with their Xbox One controllers playing on the PC.
Snoop Dogg moving backwards in the trench, just staring at the screen with a blunt.
Actually, just smoking a blunt live on the stream.
Indoors.
Moving backwards in the trench, doing nothing. And that's what they showed.
Incredible. And then they zoomed in on Zac Efron's face, and Zac Efron is looking at his screen like... It's just...
Yeah, and like Jamie Foxx wasn't even trying to hide it. He's like, "We're gonna go hit up Wiz and make this go a little easier." Like, I mean,
when they came
what,
on screen,
what are they
going
to do?
They were waving their hand in front of their face, and Jamie Foxx couldn't stop coughing, and it was like, what the fuck is going on?
It's just so dumb. I'm glad it happened.
It was great. I mean,
I'm glad it happened.
I don't know what they intended that segment to come across as, but I feel like their attitude was probably like, well, we've got a bunch of celebrities here. It can't go wrong.
Well,
we're going to get a lot of attention.
That's true. They did.
You know, whatever happens, we're going to get attention drawn to our game, and that is definitely what happened.
Speaking
was
of,
weird.
I almost forgot there was a game involved in this. Battlefield 1
Yeah.
looks like a piece of shit, same as the other Battlefields.
I mean,
It looks like a reskin. It looks entirely like a reskin.
But yeah, I mean, if you expect anything different, you're a fool.
Well, Of course. I wasn't expecting anything different. But what really grinds my gears, you know what grinds my gears? The Call of Duty Infinite Warfare stuff.
Where everyone said
the
Battlefield
comparisons
blew it out
to
of them.
Battlefield
Yeah.
1. Like, back when they were first unveiled, and that famous, it's a meme now, that first trailer for Call of Duty Infinite Warfare with the 3 million dislikes or whatever. Everybody was saying,
throughout E3, there was a league of people
rip Call of
typing
Duty,
in Battlefield
Duty.
1 and stuff into the chat. As like, there's some like battle going on amongst.
It's just a
weird.
meme. It's not a battle. It's a meme. It's just like typing Kappa. It's
I
no
guess.
different. It's not an opinion. It's just a collection of characters on a screen.
But yeah, I mean, it's a Battlefield game, and that's what it is. And if you like that, then fine. Here's another one. This one doesn't have red dot sights in it. It was cool when the
Heavens to
Zeppelin
Betsy.
crashed.
Oh yeah.
It was a good effect.
But when they first unveiled these games, it was just all over the place. Battlefield 1 is trying something different.
I mean,
They're going off in a new direction, gosh darn it. Meanwhile, we're not going to get to the rest of the Sony conference yet, because there's a lot to do there. But we can mention Call of Duty now.
oh sure.
The Call of Duty Infinite Warfare trailer that they showed at the Sony conference was fucking great.
It took me longer than I care to admit. I didn't realize it was Call of Duty until they were
The
at
names?
that window where he puts the breach on the window, and he looks over and there's the robot, and I'm like, oh, that's the robot from Call of Duty. This is Call of Duty.
Yeah, it was
I
a
don't know why it
fucking...
took me so long, because like, of course they're gonna show Call of Duty, but
It was a great dogfight in space.
it was
And
cool.
then there was all kinds of gravity shit going on the space station. That was a legitimately cool trailer. And who knows if the rest of the game can sustain that. But come on!
Yeah.
Battlefield 1 is not going off in a new direction. If you think that, you're delusional. Or at least if you think that relative to Call of Duty Infinite Warfare. Neither are blazing the trail
Call of Duty's
in
still gonna be
innovation.
Call of Duty.
But seriously, that's the largest departure from Call of Duty we've seen in a while.
It seems so, at least in the single player. They haven't even mentioned multiplayer yet, which I assume they'll keep the same because that's what everyone wants, probably. But yeah, I mean, I'm interested in the single player, and then they showed the short little preview for the Call of Duty 4 remaster, and that looks really good graphically, and I wouldn't mind playing through that again. So I could actually consider buying that game just to get both of those campaigns.
But this is what happens with memes. You can't contain them. Once they start, they don't stop.
That's true.
So I looked up the new gameplay trailer of Infinite Warfare. A really good trailer. Got like 70% dislikes.
Sure.
And you know it's only because of the meme.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't think it'll affect their bottom line too much, honestly. I do think Battlefield 1, though, is gaining a lot of momentum in the mainstream. Like, I think that's going to be a big thing moving forward, because it does seem like a lot of attention's being drawn to it.
I think it'll be a thing like the Harlem Shake was a thing.
Well, all it needs to do is sell
God,
initial...
what a shallow piece of shit game. That game is, like, seriously irritates me. Because it is the most superficial way to interest the audience. And it's
It doesn't
working.
claim to be anything else than what it is, though.
I know,
mean, it's a
but
Battlefield
everyone
game.
else claims that it is. Like, I get it's not like DICE is pulling the wool over our eyes or anything.
Yeah.
I'm unhappy that it's this popular because, and I guess not that I'm unhappy because it's popular, because that's, Battlefield is Battlefield and people enjoy it, and I'm not going to shit on people for that. But people enjoy it because they think it's different and new when it's not.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah. It is different from Call of Duty, I guess. I mean, I
Just
guess.
own up to it.
Yeah,
Own up
whatever.
to the fact that you're playing a reskin of Battlefield. It's the same. It's the same. I couldn't
Yeah.
tell the difference when I was watching the stream. It was uncanny how little it differentiated
Yeah, in
itself
fact,
from
like
any Battlefield game.
I knew that they would go really far with like, oh, look, you've got an SMG, and it's like some prototype thing that might have existed
It
at
shoots
the end
just
of World
like a
War I or
regular
something.
gun.
Yeah,
Perfect accuracy.
I thought maybe there was a chance that they would like try to fundamentally change. Like, okay, now you have like really slow firing weapons and stuff, and you have to think about it. But no,
You
it's
know
the
why?
same.
Because it's an alternate history.
Yeah,
World
even
War
like the
One.
biplanes were like shooting rockets and stuff at the like it was just silly. But well, whatever. It's a Battlefield game.
Yeah, sure.
Whatever.
Okay.
Um,
Bethesda.
Right after E3 or that night. Yeah.
Let's do the stuff nobody cares about first. So, Hearthstone. I mean, Elder Scrolls Legends. Is that what they called it?
Oh.
Elder
yeah.
Scrolls Legends. It was really funny the lengths that the guy went to avoid saying the word Hearthstone.
Yeah.
He even said,
I
I love games like these.
these kinds of games.
These kinds of games. I'm a big strategy, like electronic strategy card game connoisseur. Like, it's
Like,
obviously
the wide
Hearthstone.
genre.
Yeah, the one more entry in the already storied field.
Speaking of storied, it's gonna have a narrative
Now
experience.
that's
along with
important. I'm glad that it has that story mode.
Yeah.
There's also, this seems to be Bethesda's business model right now, is to just copy Blizzard, because
Yeah.
they also are introducing Quake Champions, which, as soon as I saw the trailer for it, first they said there's a new Quake game, and I was thinking, okay, it's not going to be like regular Quake because they just released Doom, so it's going to be some kind of spin-off. And then they started showing the trailer, and it was a bunch of single shots of characters running around, and they all looked different, and there was a quirky-looking blue-haired girl, and like a mean guy with a chainsaw, and then like a skinny guy running around. And that's when I realized this is either a MOBA or Overwatch. And I was just waiting to see which. And then he dropped the hammer and said, "You know, when people think Quake, when we really get to the heart of Quake, it's all the badass, cool characters with unique abilities.
Yeah.
That's why
Abilities
it's
is
a
the key word.
ability class-based shooter.
Yeah.
Quake Champions."
I mean, at first I didn't think anything of it. I was thinking, okay, they fucked up with the Doom multiplayer because people just aren't. Nobody gives a shit about the Doom multiplayer. They fucked it up. And so their response to that, or maybe not even their response, but like going in, they said like, okay, we'll make the Quake multiplayer the classic style that people want from Doom, and this will be our option for them basically. And even when they started showing all the characters with their different stuff going on, I thought, okay, that's how, you know, the Unreal games are. You've got like different characters, and they all, especially the old ones, they had like different movement speeds and stuff, like depending on the game. I know that like one of them, that I think Unreal Championship, I think, had like the characters were different, and they started with different weapons and stuff, but everyone could pick up weapons. And I was thinking that was kind of the direction they're going with it, where it's like there's minor differences in them. But no, I think it is going to be like class-based. They said arena combat, so I don't think it'll be like Overwatch, where you've got like bottlenecks and objectives and stuff.
I think it'll be more like running around, but
yeah, I think it'll still just be like a deathmatch style thing. But
the way they described it and what they showed, it looked like it was clearly taking its cues from Overwatch, and that's something that they did in the rest of their presentation, is took their cues from Blizzard.
yeah, and I don't think, I mean, that doesn't mean that Quake's going to be a bad game, but how disappointing is that if you, like, there were rumors before, like, oh, they're making a Quake thing, and I think that's kind of what everyone assumed, was what I was assuming, which is like, okay, cool, they're making a multiplayer, classic-style combat
Something that
game.
would, like, replace Quake Live, or at least
Exactly.
be that kind of thing.
Yeah, and how disappointing is it to hear like abilities and go like, okay, that's not the game that I was thinking it would be.
Yeah.
And that is definitely not the first time that happens in E3 in general. But
That is
we'll
true.
Keep going. This happens later on in the conference, actually.
Well, I disagree, because I didn't see the original Prey 2 stuff.
Whatever.
But, okay, I guess we'll just talk about that now. So, Arcane showed a pre-rendered trailer for Prey, not Prey 2, Prey. So now
Yeah.
we've got 2 great games in the Prey series.
Yep.
We got Prey, and we got Prey. They really aren't even trying anymore. That was
Prey
another theme at this
2017.
E3, was just completely... This has been happening for years with, like, the reboots, but they just threw all care out the window now. Like, they just call the new game the game without subtitles or numbers anymore. I think that the next Halo game is just going to be called Halo. At this rate, I mean...
They'll go to 6, and then they'll do Halo.
Yes, they will. Yes, they will. They totally will.
They're gonna do ODST 2. They're gonna do something that's kind of like Reach, where it's like, oh, here's a different part of the Halo universe, and these are gonna go between the 5 and the 6 and all that stuff.
Halo, the Sergeant
and so
Johnson
after the one
stories.
after 6, it's gonna be Halo, and yeah, I don't know. That'll be a reboot. But anyway,
Yeah, that sounds great.
Yeah, Prey. First of all, I don't know why they used. So Prey 2 didn't make much sense either. So Prey 2 got announced years and years ago at E3 with a cool little trailer where, okay, you're a bounty hunter in a sci-fi world, and you're a human who got sucked up into the UFO in the original Prey, which nobody cares about and doesn't really matter where you came from. That's the background though, and you're a cool human bounty hunter in a city full of aliens, and that was fucking awesome. That concept is fantastic, and
it's ridiculously ambitious, and it proved to be
it's ambitious. I don't know about ridiculously.
It proved to be
ambitious.
impossible for them.
Maybe ridiculously ambitious for a developer created by Bethesda.
They couldn't do it. They didn't do it because they couldn't do it.
They tried, and they got a working game, but they apparently decided it wasn't good enough, so they canceled it. And rumors this year started going around like, oh, Prey 2 is going to be at the conference, and nobody knows what it is. It's going to be a different developer. But everyone, I think most people kind of assumed like, okay, they've gone on that concept again, right? They're going to still do the bounty hunter thing because everyone loved that concept. And instead, they slapped the name on a horror, what looks like a linear horror story thing, which is fine. Look, cool, whatever. Maybe it's good. But it's not at all what people expected or wanted out of that license, which
I guess
if it's a sequel or a reboot of the original Prey, that's definitely not what people wanted, because who cares about
I'll
the
tell you
original
one
Prey?
thing.
I mean, I know it has
No
fans,
one.
but like
No one cares about the original Prey. That's the
No.
thing. They don't care about meeting people's expectations about the canceled Prey 2, because very few people are even aware or care about the canceled Prey 2 or have even played Prey.
there's a small amount of passionate people who do care a lot. Otherwise, they wouldn't bother using the Prey name. I wouldn't think, unless they're just like, fuck it, we're going to use the licenses we have. I don't know.
You can get mainstream buzz by rebooting obscure things, but you can't cash in on the specifics.
Anyway, it's super disappointing for me because I want that concept. I mean, I don't really trust it in Bethesda's hands, but who knows?
Well, it's Arcane.
Yeah,
I trust Arcane.
Bethesda still has their hands in everything, but yeah, I mean, I wanted that concept to come to fruition, and it's not, and that sucks. That was super disappointing for me, especially after like I was really interested in that trailer. I was like, okay, this looks neat, and then they showed Prey, and I was like, well, fuck.
All I can say is I've never seen a second of footage of Prey or Prey 2 or any of that. This is all I've seen, and this looks like a cool concept. It's not a game yet. It was a pre-rendered trailer.
Yeah.
So who knows? But I was interested by what I saw.
Yeah. Mysterious sci-fi crazy shit.
Yeah, I like stuff like that.
You don't know what's VR and what's real.
It was kind of like, it reminded me, or I guess not reminded me, but it seemed like it was going for a little bit of BioShock 1, System Shock 2 kind of vibe.
Yeah, I got that same.
And that's I really like that stuff. So I hope.
But yeah, I'm excited for it. But
I hope it's a good game.
I'm just really disappointed that.
And I think Arcane is a capable enough developer to not have eyes bigger than their stomach and to have an idea and execute on it. Which brings us to Dishonored 2. And that looked fantastic.
It did.
That was the best part of that whole conference by far.
Yeah. First of all, the style of that world, what they first showed was just basically not still images, but non-gameplay of
Yeah.
the world.
They were just moving the camera.
The style is so
through the
interesting.
environment.
It's so awesome. So the first Dishonored had a good look to it and everything, but I remember being like really weirded out. Apparently they got like the art designer from Half-Life 2.
Yeah.
And it looked like Half-Life 2. Like it just looked
The
it looked like
architecture
Combine.
was-
Like all that stuff was the same.
It really worked though.
And it worked. It was cool, but it was off-putting to me. Like that's all I could think about was Half-Life 2, and seeing this, it looks much more like it's become its own style. And
That is true.
I want to explore that world where before the other one didn't quite grab me the same way. But I was surprised to see the gameplay that they showed was really, really similar to Dishonored 1, which I guess if it's not broke, don't fix it. But, like, God, it was Dishonored again. And I'm fine with that. But I was a little surprised. I thought that they'd switch it up more. I don't know why.
Dishonored is one of my favorite games. I really like that game. I played a ton of it. I played it many times on every difficulty, and did all the different runs that you can imagine, like totally non-lethal, non-spotted. And one of the biggest problems with that game is that going non-lethal was just boring. You didn't really have that many tools at your disposal. Yeah. And I get that it should be challenging, but if you were just playing through the game for the first time stealthily, you really could just only walk around and blink, and there wasn't much else you could do. Mm-hmm. Or you could like line up headshots with the sleep dart, but that was always really unsatisfying. What they showed of Emily's gameplay was really, really cool to me, having played so much of the first one, because she's a very different kind of character. Her abilities are, except for that like grab thing that pulls people over, which was cool. And there's probably lots of uses for that. But specifically, the mesmerize ability that like distracts enemies, and the domino ability that lets you chain the effects between them, so that if you inflict a status effect like death or like sleep on one of them, it'll take them all out at once.
Yeah.
I think that's clearly the stealthy character, and I think that's what that game needed. That was what it was missing, was that fully fleshed out stealthy, subterfuge kind of approach.
Right.
So that really had me. It also just... You're right, it wasn't a total revolution of Dishonored. I think most of the effort went into like the design and it paid off. Yeah. And I believed them when they were telling us that we actually put thought into what was in this place 10, 20 years before you were there, and there's the marks on the walls of where the floodwaters come up and go down. Like
all the guards look so good. That was the first thing I noticed, was like they have cartoony proportions,
like the dinosaur heads, and like
but they look real. Like they look like the actual people, but they don't. You wouldn't see a person looking like that in real life, and that was just really cool. Like it has that. It's like Uncanny Valley, but in a good way. Like God, that looks real, but they're also cartoonish, and that I was just super impressed with that. And yeah, they talked all about. I love what they were saying about the world, and like how like okay, they thought about the history of it and everything. That's what I'm always saying about games. Like they should put more thought into why are things the way they are in the world, because that's what draws me in. And I don't know how much of that was actually shown in the trailer. I was disappointed to see writing on the wall as world building. Taxes doesn't really impress me as far as world building, but I mean that's just like two examples. Whatever, who cares? But,
they do that in Dishonored 1 too. But what makes it not fall apart is that they don't just lean on that. They'll have the graffiti, but they'll also have the subtler things in like the back alleys. Yeah. Things that you just observe.
It's gotten to the point where when I see graffiti in games, I instantly go like, ugh.
That's true. It's a pretty lazy device at this point.
Yeah.
And worked in Half-Life 2 at the time. The Half-Life 2 graffiti was
Wasn't
good at
just
the
the
time.
Half-Life 2 graffiti just the rebellion symbols? Was there any other graffiti?
Yeah, they weren't like heavy-handed
Sure.
messages about
Yeah.
things. They were like images and icons of
Yeah.
resistance or of the Combine or that
Half-Life
game.
2 had very good world
Half-Life
building
2
because
was a great game.
you could see the way that the Combine changed the city and everything, and that was really cool. Very unique at that in that era of a shooter.
If you just pretend Half-Life ended at Half-Life 2 without the expansions, you know, you can kind of close that up in your heart.
Half-Life 3 is never going to come.
It's never gonna come. It's never.
Was there anything else? Well, Skyrim Remastered.
Oh yeah, with the piss filter.
It literally just looked like a filter. Like they were showing, like they'd show, like here's a scene, and then here's it remastered, and it was like, oh, it's oranger now. Like there wasn't more vegetation or anything. It
wasn't
it
more
looked better. I'm sure
vegetation. It
there's-
was it was higher res textures, and
I'm sure
it
there's some
looked
different
it
improvements that
looked
they've made.
better.
Yeah,
But
think
you know,
about like when they showed Grand Theft Auto 5 for the PC. I think it was last year's E3.
That
or E3 before that
was an upgrade. That
it
was a
like,
remaster.
blowing everyone's mind. I was
And they
sitting there
didn't
going,
call
like,
it a
Is this
remaster.
Grand Theft Auto? Like this doesn't even look the same. It doesn't even look like the same game.
They didn't
And yeah,
even
they
call
just-
it a remaster. It's just
yeah, it was
Grand
just
Theft
an
Auto
update.
5 for next gen.
Yeah, and yeah, it's just I don't expect Bethesda to do the same thing that Rockstar would do, but still, like,
Clearly,
it's just,
they're
like, super disappointing
equal
to, like,
caliber
see, like,
developers.
yeah,
Bethesda
yeah.
and Rockstar.
But I got the impression. I mean, I know that this isn't what happened because, of course, they're gonna like try to upgrade the graphics a little bit. But my initial reaction was like, oh, they weren't planning on upgrading it at all, and then they had to slap a few things on there to make it look like it was upgraded because people started calling it a remaster instead of it just coming out on the new consoles.
It looks like a modded Skyrim. It looks like there's some
It
graphics.
looks worse than a modded Skyrim.
That's
You've
true.
seen like the best mods
Well,
for
yeah,
graphics
whatever.
are like way better.
Well, except they all look like shit in the end. Because
True. I mean, it's
if
a
you
bad engine. It's
this
not a
exactly. There's awesome screenshots of modded Skyrim
Yeah.
that look legitimately impressive. And it's like, whoa, I wanna kind of install that and see what that looks like. And then you do, and everybody still looks like they're puppets with
the animation's
bizarre
always going to be bad, and
clown faces.
then of course the
and-
game runs like shit because it's so poorly
yeah,
optimized.
Yeah, that game is kind of rotten to the core.
Yeah. Fuck Skyrim.
Yeah, I can't wait to buy it on my Xbox.
And play approved mods.
Yes,
PM.
pre-approved paid mods.
Yeah.
Okay, Microsoft. I just wrote question mark because I hadn't heard anything about it.
Well, they
But-
made some pretty big announcements.
Did they?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. They made one big announcement.
Because first of all, there's the Xbox One S, which is a cheaper, smaller, newer version of the Xbox, and
Who was it who said that they weren't going to be like smartphones?
did anyone say that?
You.
I didn't say that. What did I say?
You
I
said
don't remember.
you said that.
Oh. I don't know. It looked like they were going that direction for a while now, but yeah. So I think it has like very, very minor improvements, but they're saying like don't buy this to make it a more powerful console. It's
Yeah,
just
it's basically
just
slim.
it's the slim.
Which
But
really,
they also
yeah. I won't.
they also announced a new, more powerful console. They didn't show it or anything. It's in early stages, but they're aiming for 4K gaming.
at 60 FPS. They said for some titles. They
Maybe
said
for some
6
titles.
60 hertz 4K. So who knows what that means?
I don't know. Yeah, I don't know if that's across the board. Because from what I heard was like that's what they're aiming for is the ability to do 4K, and that's it. And that they're giving the developers the freedom. If the developers want to, can still do 1080, and they can raise the frame rate or whatever, do other kinds of improvements. Phil Spencer was doing an interview on Giant Bomb's live stream where he was talking about how Halo 5 does a trick with frame rate where to keep a steady 60 frames per second, it lowers the resolution if it's struggling.
I'm okay with that.
Yeah, I mean it's a clever idea, and apparently it works very well. And he said, so if you were to play Halo 5 on the newer Xbox,
You wouldn't do that.
yeah, it would just stay at 60 frames per second. So you'd get that advantage, even if it wasn't at 4K. You're still getting a slightly different experience. And he said, we're fine with developers doing what they want with the new power, but what we aimed for is the 4K stuff. So I don't know. I mean, whatever. Neat, I guess. It's probably going to be super expensive and not worth it if you're a PC gamer. But I love that they're giving that option. And the other thing that I'm really happy that they seem to be going all in on is cross-platform gaming. All their first-party titles that are coming out on Windows 10 and Xbox, and you buy it once and you get it on both. So if you're one of the few people who made the mistake of buying an Xbox and you're a PC gamer, you can play it on either console you want with just one purchase, which is pretty neat. I thought that was
the cross-platform stuff is good. I still haven't seen a single title I want, but
I want the new Forza Horizon 3 or whatever.
Racing games.
Yeah, whatever. If you're not into it, whatever. But
maybe the Pirate game by Rare.
Yes,
that's something I might play.
I don't think that's Xbox.
I'm pretty sure it's Windows too.
Yeah, it is Windows, but I guess it's not coming out on the PlayStation. Yeah, I'm definitely getting that. That looks awesome. And apparently, they had it playable where you could play like 4v4 on the show floor, and people are saying it was like the longest line until they released Zelda. Yeah, that looks amazing to me. I love that idea. I've been saying they should make games like that for a while now, where like you're crewing a ship. But yeah, that's really cool that like we'll be able to play that on the PC. And the craziest part to me, I didn't expect this at all, cross-platform multiplayer, where you can play with people on the console.
Microsoft, fun fact, they're pretty good at developing software.
I guess, yeah.
So, you know what? If anybody could do like a solid cross-platform experience, it would be them.
Yeah, and I mean, and even if it isn't the best experience, it's cool that they're trying, because they don't have to, and nobody expected them to. Or I don't think anybody expected them to say, like, oh, you can play co-op Gears cross-platform. Nobody would have expected that.
Yeah, and it's not going to be like Rocket League. They're going to use the same. I'm assuming
you're going to have an
Xbox
login
on Windows. Yeah.
Yeah.
So you'll have a friends list. You can invite people on an Xbox One if they have that. I think it'll be good.
Yeah, I hope so. Because they fucked up with Games for Windows Live, and that is something that Phil Spencer acknowledged when he was talking about it. He was like, "Yeah, we Games for Windows Live was a big mistake, and and here's what we're doing instead." And
they had to.
Yeah.
For anyone to buy into this, they had to acknowledge
say, like,
that was a
we
mistake.
fucked up. But yeah, I just think that's really neat.
The bizarre thing to me about Xbox at this E3 was that they announced the Xbox One S and the new Xbox Scorpio
at the same time.
Who would buy an S now?
Well, I think they did a poor job of getting this message across, and I agree they should have had separate announcements. But they're different. They're different products. One is if you're going to buy a new Xbox and you just want the new Xbox, get the S because it's smaller and cheaper. But if you want the premium 4K experience, that's what the Scorpio's for, and you're going to be paying more for it. They didn't announce a price point or anything, which means it's going to be expensive.
But I mean, at this point, if you're even considering buying an Xbox One, and they announce the Xbox One S and the Scorpio at the same time,
I'd still get the S because I don't give a shit about 4K.
Neither do I. That's why I would get an original Xbox One for like $100 less.
Maybe. I don't know. I mean,
definitely.
I don't know how much cheaper the original's going to be.
I do, because I was in GameStop before they even announced the S, and it was like $189 for a used one. And after the S comes out, it's going to be like $150, $140 maybe. That's actually affordable.
I don't really get this, and this is not me, but people really like getting the smaller white version of the, like they want the newest thing, even if it is just a console. I mean, the PS Slims and their success have shown that people buy those,
But that's because they were spaced out in a way that made sense. They were never right before. They didn't release the PS3 Slim at the same time they announced the PS4.
Yeah, but that's different because the PS4 is the next generation, and the Scorpio
is an incremental upgrade.
Is like, this is the premium experience of our current generation.
There's no generations anymore.
Exactly, and there's not. Well, there's still. eventually they're going to have to make an Xbox that isn't backwards compatible with the original Xbox One.
Will they?
Yeah, eventually, because it's going to
really
be too
don't.
hard for the developers to develop for that wide spectrum of power. They're going to have to. They're going to have to.
Oh, you
abandon
mean
their
new
old...
games that won't work on the? Yeah, that's
Yeah,
true. But
because
at
right now
some
they're
point,
saying-
it's just going to be like system requirements on a PC.
Yeah. But right now they're saying, don't. Everything that comes out on the Scorpio is going to come out on the Xbox One, so
Yes,
it's
that
not
will
like
stop being true.
it's
at some
not the
point.
next generation. So you can buy the S without worrying about becoming obsolete or anything. So that's their argument. I agree though that the way they messaged it was bad. I feel like that was a mistake because now because people are thinking like you are, where it's like, well, shit, I need to know more about that newer one. I'm not going to buy this S because now it already seems like it's the second best. So yeah, I get it, but yeah, they still fucked up. All right, that's all I can remember about Microsoft. I'm sure there's some other stuff. But...
So we can move on to the best conference then.
Yeah, I agree. It was the best conference.
Far and away the best conference. So Sony, they start with a live orchestra playing this crazy tribal sounding anthem thing, and then there's this lady on a drum who's going. Yeah,
it's crazy.
So it was this crazy orchestra, and it builds up, and at first I thought it was like Horizon Zero Dawn, because it looked kind of tribal and the
I had no idea
rags.
what it was.
And then it looked too dull for it to be Horizon. So the kid runs inside, and it's fucking
wait.
Kratos.
We're skipping Ubisoft.
Well,
Did you see Ubisoft? There's not a whole lot to
there's
say
Watch
about it.
Dogs 2.
So, here's what I've come to realize about Watch Dogs 2.
It's a piece of shit.
I like the idea a lot of like being able to carry out a mission and fuck with all the electronics in a way that like can sneak your way in and that kind of thing, distract people, whatever. But so they start out the thing and he's doing like a stealth mission where he's like infiltrating a skyscraper, and he starts all stealthy and stuff. And I tweeted this. I was like, just waiting for it to turn into a third-person shooter, because that's what the original Watch Dogs was, like a shooter, and you could occasionally have like the electronic abilities that were just like totally secondary.
The original Watch Dogs was a bad game.
Yeah, bad game. And in their defense, they kept it like non-lethal, I guess, to like prove like, hey, look, we're giving you the option to go non-lethal with this game. But they eventually he gets spotted and he starts getting shot.
And he pulls out his cool gun and starts gunning people down.
Pulls out a taser. He tases someone.
And murders everyone after
But
that.
then he pulls out a big ass like M14 with a scope or something like that, and just hip fires it into the window and breaks the window, and then puts it back and pulls out the taser again and starts shooting people with his taser. And it was just like,
It's tactical.
If-
He's making
if they-
tactical choices.
if they hadn't pulled out the big ass machine gun, I would almost be sold on it, because it's like, okay, cool. He's having to use his abilities, his hacking stuff to get through it. And
That would
and-
immediately make Watch Dogs a million times better if there were no guns that you could use.
Yeah, or if guns just weren't a objectively better option if you weren't going completely non-lethal, where it's like, well, fuck, he could just pull out his gun right now and just gun them all down and be done with it.
Why bother stealthing?
Why bother? I mean, I know there's plenty of games where, like, okay, you give yourself the challenge of, like, trying to go non-lethal and everything, but I don't trust them enough for it to be a viable and fun on its own, because I think they expect everyone to just pull out the guns, and that this was just kind of like a, look how cool the hacking stuff is, and look, we're non-lethal, or we get that option, but that doesn't mean it's a fun option.
Yes.
I don't know. I'm not sold on that. Maybe it'll come out and get good reviews and whatever, but not sold on it. They announced they didn't announce, they showed the new South Park Fractured Butthole, which it was not a very good showing. The trailer was good. It looks like it's going to be basically just parodying the whole like Marvel superhero craze concept.
Is
Which
it
I
same
like.
gameplay as the Stick of Truth?
It looked similar, but not necessarily the same. It's
Because
a different developer.
I liked that Paper Mario gameplay.
I think it's similar, but I'm
The
not
gameplay
sure.
was probably the best part of that game.
Really.
I mean,
still haven't played it.
the jokes obviously were good, but
Yeah.
as far as like the game mechanics of that game went,
I heard that too.
the
Like
combat
every
was
enemy
great.
is different, and so it like stays fresh and everything. But
Yeah, it wasn't like a hack job,
yeah,
which is the most surprising thing you can say about an adaptation
yeah.
like that.
It seems like Matt and Trey like kind of go all in, and they really they want the writing to be good, and they voice act everything and all that.
You could tell they knew what makes a video game good and what's
Mhm.
annoying, and
Yeah,
they
well, I think they trust the developers to make an actual video game, and then they actually write it themselves, which
Yeah.
is like, okay, you're letting everyone do their jobs, which is sounds simple, but not a lot of people get that right, I think. So yeah, I don't know that's I'm sure that's going to be good. If the first one was good, why not? But they also announced a mountain sports game, like snowboarding, skiing, wingsuits, parachutes, etc. It looks kind of neat, but I heard very bad things about it out of people who played it, who just said like it just doesn't really have a whole lot to it. And they showed Wildlands, which is the Ghost Recon game. I was super disappointed in that showing. It just looked really, really boring. They did their classic. Ubisoft loves this. Their scripted multiplayer chat, where it's like, okay, I'm gonna take out the sniper. I'm gonna move in on the
cover
train
my
tracks
six.
Yeah, well,
Cover
you take
my
out the guy on the
six.
right, and I'll take the guy out the guy on the left. I'll give him the credit that it wasn't as like cringeworthy as usual, but it was still. It's just like you watch it and you go like, okay, well, I know that it's not going to actually play this way because people don't play that way in multiplayer. And it just looked super boring. Like I love the idea of infiltrating this huge thing and like staying stealthy and all that stuff. But the way they were playing it was like first of all they kept on just coming up across people's while their backs are turned, like people just staring at walls and stuff and just shooting them in the back, which not very exciting. And the only gadget that they used was like a drone, and then they ended in a car chase and flew off in a helicopter, and it was just like super boring. Yeah, I don't know that game. I just don't have a lot of hope for that one. What else did they showed a Star Trek VR experience, which
I love VR experiences.
did not look great, but they showed it in the best possible way. They had fucking Geordie LaForge as one of the people playing, and I think some of
was
the other
that?
actors might have been from the Star Wars stuff. But Geordie's the black guy with the visor from the Next Generation.
Oh, I'm not a nerd like you, so
I've seen quite a bit of the Next Generation, and that was kind of exciting to see him actually like playing this game, and like he was being himself, but he was like accidentally going into character, and that was kind of funny. But the game or experience or whatever just looks retarded. But yeah, whatever. VR's they need to try harder with that stuff. I don't know what else. I don't think Trials Blood Dragon, which nothing to say about that. Recore, was that Microsoft?
that was Microsoft.
I think
It's just
showed
another
Recore.
trailer. Who cares?
Recore, I don't get Recore. I don't know what I'm supposed to.
It's
be.
probably gonna be cute or something.
I guess maybe it's trying to be a kid's game. I don't know. I don't see what the appeal of that game is. Like what they're trying to show is like here's the thing that you do. I don't really get it. And yeah, I think that's about it for Ubisoft. So yeah, let's
Okay,
go back
thank
to
God.
Sony.
So, Sony. Actually, this is probably one of the worst parts of the Sony conference, though it was what got some of the most excitement out of the crowd. So the tribal kid, goes into the hut, and this gruff voice speaks from the darkness. Your mother's knife. Is yours now. We will go on the hunt.
Kratos
Kratos!
mean as hell. I would
He
be
does.
terrified to have that as a dad. He is scary.
Yes. Yeah, at first I thought it was pretty cool, and I heard a lot of the comparisons to The Last of Us, where there's
I
walking
didn't
around.
get those comparisons.
I heard those. But
I guess just because it's like a father,
like
daughter,
yeah,
son,
walking
whatever.
around, and
But-
I'm totally fine with that. I think that if they're going to do a reboot, it should be different in
Oh,
some
hell yeah.
substantial way. But I gotta say, the actual combat looks really bad. One of the best parts of God of War was how just intense the combat was. Lots of shit going on, and the enemies reacted to what Kratos was doing, and it was just very exciting. But when Kratos is attacking enemies in this God of War, which is just called God of War, by the way, in keeping with the most recent craze, it looked like somebody said Dark Souls in the chat. It actually looked like Lords of the Fallen.
Yeah.
It looked like that super
Wannabe Dark
clunky,
Souls.
stiff wannabe Dark Souls. No reaction out of the enemies whatsoever. Very stiff rolling. It did not look good. I thought some of it, like the smaller enemies, when there's more like involvement with the animations and then like throwing the axe, that looked kind of cool. But when he's fighting the massive troll creature, it just didn't look good. It looked like a cinematic kind of quick time event thing, which God of War always has been.
Yeah.
Let's not even sugarcoat this. But they still did it kind of right. There was combat, intense action before the quick time events, and then it was like a struggle to rip their heads off, mashing the triangle button until it finally happened.
Yeah.
This was like circle strafing him and running up and hitting his legs twice with no reaction. I mean, and then breaking into a cutscene.
I don't know. It's very hard. I think I couldn't really tell how the combat would feel just from watching it. To me, the first thing I noticed was these graphics look way, way, way too good for a PS4.
Well,
even if it's supposed to be the PS4 Neo or something.
Uncharted 4 looks that good. It does.
They combined lighting and textures and particle effects in a way that I don't believe.
I do believe.
I find it unbelievable. But we'll see.
Having played Uncharted 4,
I've seen Uncharted 4.
I think Uncharted 4 looks better.
And I've seen God of War, and I thought God of War looked way too good.
I don't think so. I think obviously it's E3, and things can get downgraded, and they are all the time. But nothing in that trailer stood out to me as looking particularly better than Uncharted 4. Sony has proven that they know how to build a game engine that squeezes every last drop of juice out of the PlayStation 4.
Yeah.
Objectively, it is not a very powerful piece of hardware, but they are really, really good at optimizing for it. And Uncharted 4, it's still just, I don't know. There's things you can nitpick in that game, like anti-aliasing maybe, but I still think that game does have anti-aliasing.
We talked about this. Uncharted 4 looks good, not necessarily because of the where you say like, oh, look at how the lighting looks, or look at how the textures look. It's just has a good look to it, which makes it look amazing.
Well, no. It does have a great look to it, and I'm saying there are things you can nitpick, but a lot of what makes it so amazing are the technical details, like the light on water and the light between trees. So there was some video, I forget who made it, that was explaining how they calculate the way the light filters through the trees differently, where in other games, if you're not looking up at the light source, then the God rays don't come through the trees accurately, just because how every other game does it. And Naughty Dog set up the math differently so that it's always visible, and it's just the little details like that, they add up. And so technically even, it looks better than most every game I can think of. And while there must be things you can nitpick where they cut corners, they cut all the right corners to foreground some of the most technically impressive graphics I've ever seen. And I think it's totally doable for them in God of War.
Well, maybe you're right. I'm putting my money on it being downgraded to a very noticeable level, but we'll see.
I won't deny the possibility of downgrade.
Regardless, it felt something about that demo felt so scripted to me.
Oh yeah.
Where I didn't feel like it was representative of how the game's actually going to be. Like if this is in the game, it's going to be a tutorial thing where the game then changes. Because it just, first of all, they didn't have any like button prompts or anything on the screen, which was...
They did for Spartan Rage.
They did, but...
That was it.
Yeah, exactly. They felt very strategically placed. Everything just felt fake in a weird way.
I think that
and
game is probably very early in development.
yeah, me too. And so I just don't know what to expect from it. It was a very it was an exciting way to start the conference because it was so unexpected to
Yes.
see. Wow, God of War, and he's a Viking, and it's not God of War. It's like something completely different. Really interesting. And yeah, very very strong way to kick off the conference. And then I think they went straight
Immediately
into
after Last Guardian.
Horizon or Last
Last
Guardian.
Guardian. Immediately. Curtains
Yeah.
fell down and
Yeah.
it all got white and the live
God,
orchestra was playing.
Yeah,
And
they orchestrated the whole conference.
Yeah.
Which I was joking on Twitter. I was like, I was joking that they're turning it into a musical, but like, that's what it
worked.
was.
And you know, this was the year where if they didn't show Last Guardian trailer, it was actually going forever.
Yeah.
And they put their money where their mouth was finely.
They showed gameplay.
They showed
of, like,
gameplay. They
very-
showed
yeah.
they showed new gameplay. They showed some new concepts from the game, like the other guardian creatures that are not very
Yeah.
nice. But the bombshell, the release date. The
Yeah.
Last Guardian has a fucking release date, and it's less than 4 months away. It's a little over 4 months away.
Yeah.
A lot of people didn't think this was ever going to happen. I'm glad it's
I
happening.
would have said it wasn't going to happen until last year when they showed it. But
So very strong start.
yeah. And so yeah, and so that's the thing is like they went straight from the orchestra to the God of War orchestrated to the Last Guardian to then I think they went straight into Horizon Zero Dawn.
Yeah. And that
no
was
pauses,
a fucking great trailer.
nobody talking or anything, and that was the best demo of E3 I think.
Yeah.
It was surprising because I didn't think that they would show very much of it because like okay we got a good bite of it last year where it's like okay here's the concept.
It was so
but-
much gameplay focused.
Yeah, this
stuff
one
that they
seems much
showed.
more like okay here's the game. I said this last year and you disagreed with me. That game is The Witcher 3.
Well,
It is The
no.
Witcher 3. It is The Witcher 3.
No, okay. From
The enemies it shows the enemies' weaknesses, which includes like, okay, here's their weaknesses to these items, to these kinds of bows, and you know,
I won't
yeah,
deny
the map,
extremely
the
strong
whole-
similarities.
The whole menu screen was laid out the same as The Witcher 3, where you've got like map, inventory,
yeah.
quests, and the map looks the same. It's The Witcher 3. It looks the same.
I get it. I get what you're saying, but the focus of the games are very different.
I agree. I mean, I'm not saying it's going to be exactly like The Witcher 3, but
the combat in Horizon
totally
looks
different.
top notch.
Yes.
That
I agree.
combat is amazing. That sense of hunting something is you don't get anything like that in The Witcher 3, even on the best of the Witcher contracts. The scenario is obviously the best in the
Yeah.
business, but the sense of physically hunting a creature is not present in the way it is in Horizon. The conversation wheel is obviously lifted straight out of The Witcher, and you can clearly see that it's the same developers. It is a lot of the same developers.
Yeah. Apparently, they had a lot of influence too.
I'm glad that they didn't bother concealing it. They just take what works, and
Yeah.
they have.
I'm fine with it.
I don't want to make too many comparisons because, like, on the one hand, The Witcher does its world so well, but Horizon is not a world we've ever seen. There's lots of fantasy games. The Witcher is probably the best fantasy game, but
Potentially.
we've seen fantasy games. We haven't seen a post-apocalypse where AI become like animalistic.
It's a really, really
it's
awesome
so
concept.
unique.
Yeah.
And the combat supporting it is
Yeah.
so interesting.
You're like aiming at weak spots and exploiting, taking control of robots and that kind of thing. Like very, very, very cool stuff. I'm super excited for it. It's going to be a major factor of when I eventually get a PS4. That'll be a major factor in getting it.
This seems like the time to get the PS4.
Because it's possible that it'll actually come out and not be very good. We'll see. But yeah, from what has been shown so far, it looks amazing. I love the idea of like getting on your fucking robot, whatever thing mount, riding around and shooting the bow behind you at the machine.
Yes.
It's awesome.
It's so much more of an action game than The Witcher is. That's why I don't feel comfortable directly
Or
comparing
the
them
action
like
looks
that.
just better than The Witcher.
Oh, it's clearly better than The
yeah.
Witcher. But
So-
it's not. Like these comparisons aren't to either game's detriment, is what I'm trying to say.
I don't think so.
I'm really excited for Horizon, and that comes out. That got a release date too. It got a sneaky release date, so maybe it's subject to change. They didn't put it after the trailer. They put the release date for Horizon at the very end of the conference in a little
On the
title
memorial
card.
page.
So who knows if it's really going to come out then? But it does have a tentative release date, I'd say.
Yeah. And only then did Sean Layden, I think that's his name, come out and start talking.
About the VR experience.
They kept having him come out to extremely epic orchestral music. They showed it was like Mars by what's
He
his name?
acknowledged it at some point.
Yeah, it was just really funny. They had like the lights going and everything, and he was just walking out there, just like, yep, here I am.
What he said was very true. That there aren't many opportunities in life to be introduced by a
And
live
later
orchestra.
on in the conference, you get perhaps the most ridiculous, like WrestleMania style entrance.
Let's not get there. Let's not get there yet. Let's get the boring shit out of the way.
Yeah.
Because that's the highlight of the whole E3.
Yeah.
VR experience
yeah,
first.
VR stuff.
Okay, so
Oh.
you were hating on Twitter about Resident Evil 7.
And I take back a little bit of what I said because I was mostly just saying it to Flimsy's detriment. But but I still think it looked like shit. I think most of it was the fact that it looked like the footage of Resident Evil was taken, you know, the way that, especially when VR was like very new and people were using the dev kits, people would get that fisheye lens look of their footage and they would manually rescale it to be 1920 by...
You can play it right now.
Yeah, you can play it, and you can play it in not VR, which is one thing, like, a lot of people were speculating at first, was like, oh, is this going to be VR only? Because they're clearly showing VR footage, and it doesn't look good because it's blurry and shaky, and just, it looked like garbage to me.
You know what? I thought it looked great. I thought it looked fantastic. Not graphically, because obviously... Okay, they're trying to run an Oculus, which is the mid-range VR, you need a 970 and ridiculous specs, and they're doing VR on a PlayStation 4, not a PlayStation 4K, which they didn't even mention at all, just a PS4. So, obviously, the graphical fidelity has to be lower for them to do a quality VR experience, or even like a competent VR experience. So, I am totally... willing to accept major shortcomings in graphical fidelity. That just comes with the territory.
Yeah.
What I was so blown away by was just... I didn't know what it was at first. At first, I kind of thought, okay, this is clearly an imitation of PT, but they seem to be doing a decent job. It's obviously not as good, but it's atmospheric. It's not jump scary. I like that kind of thing. And the reveal that it was Resident Evil 7, that got me. Because Resident Evil, if you had to point to one series that has totally lost its way over the years, it's Resident Evil. If you play Remake and then you play Resident Evil 6, you will lose your mind.
Yeah.
Resident Evil 7 is an atmospheric horror game, and that alone is enough to get me really, really excited. It got kind of corny at the end, but I kind of appreciate that. It's not trying to be the super subtle, expertly done PT kind of horror, where it's also tight.
If you pick up the VCR tape and it shows up like in a classic Resident Evil fashion, like this 2D image on the screen, I thought that I was like, okay. It's kind of a cute little... Like, they have a style going there, where it's like, okay, this is kind of a classic Resident Evil style thing. And I was fine with that.
I mean, the worst thing I can say about that trailer is it got really stupid when the guy started going, "What the fuck? What are you saying? What the fuck? What are you talking about? What the fuck?" They said lots of fuck words, and it made me really uncomfortable. So
So
I don't know. I'm excited for that.
maybe it's the fact that it's shown during a conference and it just doesn't show when you're watching a live stream and checking Twitter and stuff. Nothing about it was scary to me. And I get scared pretty easily of stuff like that.
Resident Evil has never really been like scary you kind of horror. I mean, if you're a little
this
kid,
is going for clearly.
I don't think so. It
looks like it's chasing PT to me. And you said
I
that
think
too.
I think it's chasing PT, but in a Resident Evil kind of way. Like if you play Remake, it's so corny. There's just so much corny horror shit. Like you go into the graveyard and you go down into the mausoleum or whatever it's called, and there's a big coffin and there's a terrible zombie creature inside that you unlock with the different skulls, and it's corny and stupid, but it's got an atmosphere to it that it manages to hold and keep thick the whole time just by how it has you moving through that mansion. And yeah, it's really not the kind of scare the shit out of you horror that PT kind of is. I think it's taken more than its share of cues from PT. Don't get me wrong, but it's still got a Resident Evil kind of tone to it.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, I never was into Resident Evil, so I'm just coming at it as someone who like would love if a game was kind of like PT, and I felt like it didn't accomplish that.
Yeah, I don't
and maybe
think
it's not trying to, so maybe that's not a problem, but it was just weird to me, and I just didn't
PT
feel positive about that demo.
I think PT was perfect for what it was.
Yeah.
And I get to re-download it whenever I want, thanks to that method I found.
Yeah.
So I'm pretty happy about that. Don't have to lose it to hardware corruption. I guess that brings us to the bomb.
The bombshell, speaking of PT.
This was so good.
This was the most ridiculous. I think that there's been a lot of ridiculous shit that has happened on stage at E3, including this year at Ubisoft with the dancing giraffes and shit to Queen. But this has to top everything, where Sean Layden, or whatever his name is, says, "I'm here to introduce perhaps one of the greatest geniuses of game development." And like a few people figured it out instantly. You could tell. Like right when the curtain started raising, they started going, "Yeah!" and like freaking out. And I didn't figure it out until I saw it.
I got it immediately when he said one of the greatest talents and the word partnerships, because we already knew they were partnering.
Yeah, I didn't catch on, and so the curtain raises, and then the light is shining from behind him, and there's the outline of Hideo Kojima just standing there at the top of a ramp, and the light panels come up, and he's walking down on the light panels down the fucking stage, and it's playing
the Kojima Productions.
The orchestra is playing the Mad Max
Fury Road soundtrack.
Which is perfect.
And one of his favorite movies.
Yeah, and and then he showed the trailer for Death Stranding.
Death Stranding.
Stranded.
Death Stranding.
Dumb name.
Very well directed trailer.
Yeah.
But before we get into the trailer, I want to address the issue of profound mental retardation in the chat right now. Why does Kojima deserve this worship? Feels fucked up. He doesn't. Kojima is a retard that people think is amazing or something. Kojimbo was only good when he was on a leash. So I think this is worth putting in some perspective. There's a reason Kojima carries the esteem that he does. It's because every game he's made has been really interesting in some way.
Yeah.
I mean, some of them make missteps. Some of them make very few.
Yeah.
Like Metal Gear Solid 3 is almost undisputably one of the best games ever made.
Yeah.
Metal Gear Solid 5 made terrible decisions with its story, but as a gameplay experience was fantastic. Metal Gear Solid 4 made some story missteps, but still, even when you're nitpicking the flaws, it's hard to find many, or at least not enough to overshadow the overwhelming creativity. of everything he does.
Yeah.
And PT is not. You can't forget about that. That's his most recent project. Keep in mind, and it was 10 out of 10, the best horror game I've ever played.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think people are right to say that he has trouble handling a budget, but thankfully,
or time frame.
yes, but thankfully, I think Sony is probably a more effective taskmaster than Konami, because Konami didn't give a shit by the end.
Yeah, I mean, who knows? Who knows what'll happen? But I do think, I mean, he's proven himself as someone who can make great games
Yes.
that are completely unique, and he fills them full of crazy, weird shit that is totally hit or miss. You know,
But
he
the
releases-
hits are
the hits are so good
strong.
and the misses are so bad, because you'll have shit like the fucking Johnny in Metal Gear Solid 4, where it's just like he decided that he wanted that character to do a thing, and he spent a lot of time in the game focusing on that stupid character
Johnny.
doing stupid shit. And
It didn't work.
you know what? Who cares? That's what he wanted to do, and it doesn't detract from the overall
microwave
game
hallway.
enough to matter, especially when you know, like,
Right.
oh, well, this is just Kojima being Kojima. And people try to speculate on, like, oh, well, he was held back by his team or something like that, where if he was given full control, it's going to be like a George Lucas situation. That's just complete conjecture. We have no idea. No idea. It seems like throughout Metal Gear Solid's existence, he had pretty much full control over the games, maybe until Metal Gear Solid 5 when constraints were inevitable. But, yeah, I mean, I don't know. He's proven himself as being, a creative genius.
I think part of the insane worship you're seeing is because he was fucked by his company.
And a
or
lot of the worship
a very
is also
unamicable
tongue-in-cheek.
breakup, we'll say. And
Yeah.
he's back, and that's why it was so big. His entrance, by the way, you were talking about the light panel entrance with the Mad Max, but what
Yeah.
really sealed it was, "Hello, everybody, I'm back," and then just the eruption. I mean, what a moment! It's a moment people have been waiting for since people heard that his
The-
relationship with Konami went south.
The genre of the new game is apparently going to be action focused,
Which
as
is
far as the
interesting.
gameplay goes.
And
yeah,
this is the kind of Kojima thing where we don't know. There was nothing in that Death Stranding trailer that indicated it had anything to do with Ludens or that.
literally, all you learn from that trailer is that Norman Reedus is going to be in the game.
Uh,
There's nothing else that you can surmise.
there's some. I mean, it's obviously related to, like, I don't want to say like motherhood or fatherhood really, but okay, so Norman Reedus's character, whoever he is, clearly gave birth to that fetus in some way because he has that scar on his abdomen.
Yeah, and he was attached to it through an umbilical cord.
So it came out through him, and I don't know. Kojima, even in Metal Gear Solid 5, has developed such a strong sense of direction and image. That much is clear. The way that the handprints sink into the sand there, and they fill with water, and they crawl up, and
It was
the
a
camera
great
moves
trailer.
so precisely.
No idea what was going on, but it was great.
And the images of it are really what makes it, like the oily fetal handprints down Norman Reedus's leg, and then the pan up to the ocean, and those things floating out there. I mean, we don't know much about what any of it is, but it's enough to be intriguing.
Yeah, there's
So-
a very biblical feel to it all.
Oh yeah, it feels huge.
Overwhelmingly biblical, like some kind of weird birth that doesn't make biological sense, and then the floating figures in the sky. Like, it was all just very. It feels like there's going to be some kind of
Yeah,
maybe not religious, but that feeling of legend.
some kind of man-encompassing
Yeah,
tale.
weird stuff. I'm excited for it. Someone in chat saying, "Well, I can't possibly be excited for it because I haven't seen gameplay." I think that's. I mean, fine, but we're
I
not
don't think
saying
that's
like
fine.
we're not saying like, oh, we have to play this game because, oh, great, it's got to be good. It's Kojima. It's that Kojima's making another game. You can be excited for that. If I heard right now that I don't fucking know. Stanley Kubrick
Let's pretend The
was
Last
going to come
Guardian.
out with a new film.
Let's pretend The Last
2016.
Guardian has come out, and it's released, and then we find out Ueda's making a new game. It kind of feels like that, where whatever he's doing, it's going to be interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Or at least you're interested in it. The point where like,
Yeah.
I'll probably play that, or I really want to know what it is.
Who knows? Maybe a gameplay trailer will come out, and we'll go, "Oh, that looks like absolute shit," and forget
of course,
about it. But
of
I don't
course,
think that's likely.
the best thing to come out of the trailer is, first of all, the joke that it's Norman Reedus and his son, Norman Fetus. And then the revelation that Norman Reedus actually does have a son named Mingus Reedus. Which I have been literally laughing out loud to myself, about for the last 2 days. Because thinking of the name Mingus Reedus. Mingus!
I will say, okay, well that is funny. My lack of a,
really funny.
I'm not even joking here. My lack of a laugh is irrational. That is really
It's
funny.
Mingus Reedus!
It is Mingus Reedus. But
Right.
that shot of the ocean, it looks exactly like, or not exactly like, I don't want to say exactly like, but it looks a lot like the end of the Old Hunters DLC in Bloodborne, where you're out on that endless sea, and there's that corpse of Kaz that looks an awful lot like a whale, and it's a powerful image. I don't think it's unique to Bloodborne even, probably, but I think it works clearly, and Sony's very heavily involved, so who knows? And Kojima is not one to conceal his inspirations.
Right. Yeah. I mean, he pretty much everything he does is heavily inspired by something specific, very specific, like Snake as a character and all that stuff. But I wouldn't expect him necessarily to take. I don't know.
Kojima's. Sorry, I'm talking to Matsu Denton. Kojima has made a non-Metal Gear game. It was called PT, and it was the best fucking horror game.
Yeah. Yep. But I don't know. Maybe Kojima's could take. Maybe he could take influence from Bloodborne, but somehow I doubt it. He actually doesn't tend to take inspiration from other video games that much, except maybe like in gameplay improvements.
You
that
think he's read
image-
Berserk, maybe?
Who
It's
knows?
possible. I think he
But
watches movies mainly.
Yeah, that image. I think that it will have, from the look of the trailer, I think that game will have a similar feel as Bloodborne, as far as like deep, powerful mysteries and some kind of like undescribable power, or like just really like vague concepts of a legendary feeling, and that's just conjecture from what we saw, but yeah, I get that same feeling from both of those things.
And that is a very appealing kind of game to me.
Yeah, it's cool. So we'll see.
Oh yeah, I almost forgot. There was another thing at the Sony conference. It's a zombie game with motorcycles.
Yeah, I was interested in this game until I saw the zombies. Even though like survival horror, which is what it looked like it was going towards, is a played out genre, at least it looked like, okay, this is some kind of narrative experience. It looks kind of interesting. And then zombies, and I was like, oh god, there's already been like a couple other games. There was the new something we forgot to mention was the new Dead Rising. You're going back to a mall and it's Christmas time. I've never cared about Dead Rising really. But yeah, I don't know. That was just a really like deflating realization. It was cool. It is the first zombie game I've ever seen that has done zombie hordes in that way. Left 4 Dead came close, but this looks technologically more impressive with like the zombies actually look like a World War Z kind of like wave of zombies that's like endless. That looked really impressive, really cool to me. But if that's what the game is, if the game is you go places and then you fight off a zombie horde, I don't give a shit.
who knows? I think people are being a little overly negative because we don't really know what that game is still. From what I heard, though, I think the reason people are being so negative is that it closed off what was otherwise a very, very impressive show. I heard, this is completely unsubstantiated rumors, but I have heard it as if someone was spreading it with a reliable source, that they were going to close that conference off with Red Dead Redemption 2, or the sequel to Red Dead Redemption.
Which doesn't exist. Let's just make that very upfront.
It could.
It doesn't.
Why not?
I mean,
why wouldn't they? They're definitely going to make another Red Dead Redemption.
No,
was a very successful game.
I just mean I don't want people to hear you say Red Dead Redemption 2 and think that was announced at E3 or something.
Well, no. But it is potentially in production. The rumor is that's what they were going to close out the show with, and they had to replace it either because of sensitivity reasons, because of the terrorist attack over the weekend, or because maybe it wasn't ready. Whatever.
It was very bizarre that they showed more of one of the least interesting games of the conference.
It didn't fit what they were doing, and so it did feel like there was going to be something else there, and that they just kind of threw in that. But who knows? That's completely unsubstantiated. And yeah, the Call of Duty trailer, we already talked about that, I guess, but
that was a good trailer.
It was surprising. It was really surprising. I liked the Sony conference a lot.
I did. It was one of the best conferences in memory.
Oh, it did have another deflating, disappointing moment, though, where it started playing Crash Bandicoot music.
That's true.
And they walk out on stage and announce
Skylanders.
Crash Bandicoot is coming back for Skylanders and a remaster of the old games, which, okay, cool, remaster's fine, but, first they teased it with the t-shirt under the jacket that had Crash on it and didn't announce it at whatever their other show was, and now they come out, act like they're about to announce a new Crash Bandicoot game, and then don't announce a new That was just so oh, that's what that is. And I don't even think the crowd realized what was going on. The crowd was cheering, and it was guys, it's Skylanders and a remaster. That was fucked up.
So then,
let's talk about Zelda.
So Nintendo basically only showed one thing, Zelda.
They showed Pokemon, a lot of Pokemon,
a
whole lot of Pokemon. They showed a trailer for Zelda.
Because believe it or not, there are some people who care about Pokemon.
Yeah, still. They showed a trailer for Zelda, and then for the next, what felt like 4 hours, they showed Pokemon and just talked about it through a translator, and it was the most tedious thing, and I couldn't watch it.
That
guess
was strange.
Care about Pokemon,
thankfully, though, I was at work and wasn't watching it live, so I just skipped ahead. Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild. Did you see that thing I retweeted right before the podcast?
I don't know.
So the translator
so.
of Mother 3, Clyde Mandolin, retweeted something where it compared the logo of the Legend of Zelda original for the NES in its original Japanese characters to Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild. And when you see those logos back to back, it's very, very clear that this is sort of meant to be like Zelda 1, but 3D.
I think they had already talked about that.
They did, but they even explicitly do it in the logo of the game. Yeah. It's not just talk. I guess logos are just kind of marketing, but either way, it's very clear that this is a very intentional throwback to the first Zelda, where it's just a huge open space and lots to explore. And I kind of don't want to watch too much of... There's many hours of gameplay footage they released for this. I don't know how much I want to watch, because I didn't
watch that much of it.
I don't want to see that much of it. So much of the fun is just walking around and seeing what's around the next bend of the mountain or whatever.
Yeah.
But I think this game is a good return to form in a lot of ways. They showed what I think is the very, very beginning of the game, where Link wakes up in some kind of cave and he just walks out. Yeah. And notice the absence of a 2-hour-long tutorial section where Link is spoken to by, or I guess talked at by, every human being on the planet before he's allowed to pick up a sword and do everything. So that's good. It seems like the majority of the gameplay design was put into how Link is going to move around and do things in the world. You're not going to get hearts from pots randomly. You're going to hunt with your bow and going to cook up a meal. And I really like this.
Yeah, me too.
I really, really like the approach that they're taking.
And regardless of even it being put into the context of Zelda, it looks like a fascinating, fun game.
Yeah.
On its own, with all the context removed, it's like this is a really cool little open world concept. Like,
it feels like a nature game.
There's just a lot of stuff in it. And have you seen like the footage of like right, there's a windy section and someone has a little fire built and they're picking up or they're chopping down bushes to put in the fire, I guess. But the wind blows the bushes, the branches of the bushes through the fire. They catch fire. They keep moving and into a patch of grass, and the whole grass like catches on fire. And it was like a really cool like chain reaction of events. It just seems like there's a lot of that kind of thing of like just like combine things and see what happens and like try different things.
It's
and,
like a
everything's
sandbox
accounted
Zelda.
for. Yeah, really, really neat. It looks kind of awesome.
I heard that they got assistance from the guys who made Xenoblade Chronicles and Chronicles X Monolith, and you can kind of tell in just how massively huge the spaces are.
Yeah,
like with him climbing on the cliffs and everything. But yeah, I was a little afraid going into E3 that it was just going to be a straight up rehash of Ocarina of Time or something, but with just a lot of space in between. This seems to be going the complete opposite direction. So, like, Ocarina of Time was a kind of reboot of Zelda for the 3D era, and I think Majora's Mask kind of perfected what Ocarina of Time started to do, which is make it more character focused. There's cutscenes and characters speak for long periods of time, and there's a story. It seems totally different. There is a very loose story. You talk to an old man for like half a second at the start, and there's somebody talking to you, but they're not there, and you just kind of keep moving around. It's all about the quest. Or not the quest. The quest is like with an objective. It's just about running around and exploring.
It's about the adventure, yeah.
Yeah.
One thing I was really excited about, this seems like something really small, but I thought it sounded like a really awesome concept, was it seems like you pick up basically most of the weapons you're using are weapons that you're just picking up from enemies and kind of using like temporarily almost. You're kind of having to improvise your way through the combat, which I like that concept a lot. I like games that encourage you to, or even force you to use different weapons, different play styles. And I feel like Wind Waker had something like that for the first half of the game, where like weren't you like picking up enemies' weapons and stuff? I don't remember.
Yeah, but, on the Forsaken Fortress, enemies would drop their weapons.
The combat of the game reminded me of Wind Waker.
They didn't totally realize that in Wind Waker, but
it
seems like they are in this.
Yeah,
like the spear that I saw him using, that there's like a legitimate reason why you'd want to use a weapon like that, like a longer range and a more straight in front of you kind of attack versus a sweeping thing.
Yeah.
They did show the Master Sword in the trailer, but it was kind of strange how they did. They started by showing it in the sheath thing, whatever that is, the stone, and then it fades the background out, and it's the logo of the game, and the sword is all rusty. And so who knows what it's even about or where it's set in the timeline. The timeline doesn't really matter, but
I mean, there isn't really a timeline, right? Like
there
I guess
is.
there is, but it's just
there is a canon timeline that actually does make chronological sense, but it still requires like 3 branching timelines, and it's not. Basically, they make the game first and then just figure out where it goes.
Body Video could have a field day with the timelines.
Well, that's where Vadi comes from. That's where Vadi comes from. He comes from Zelda.
Yeah.
Minish Cap.
But
it's exciting. I maybe it'll convince me to. Maybe I'll buy a Wii U when it's on the cheap or something. I don't know.
Well, yeah, that's another thing. This is less about the game.
They said the word NX, by the way.
on the stream.
They need to tell me what it is.
Or
It
even
is
if
time-
it's actually going to be called NX, or if they're still just calling it NX. Or
They've
like, I don't
always
know.
had code names for their stuff.
Yeah.
The Wii was the Revolution for a long time. The
But were they
GameCube was the
calling it
Dolphin.
that, like, publicly?
Yeah, they would say the Nintendo Revolution. They even showed the physical Wii and the controller and called it the Revolution.
Huh. I didn't know that.
Yeah,
Weird. What a weird company.
they are strange. But I don't really know if I want to buy it for Wii U yet. Because the NX version is obviously going to be better.
Is it?
I guess. Maybe it's a
Because I was
smartphone
thinking,
game.
I was thinking if. So first of all, there's a section in the gameplay where Zelda pulls out a tablet that looks like
It's the Wii U gamepad.
It looks like
Wait,
the
did
Wii
you
U
say Zelda
gamepad.
pulls it out?
Yeah, Link pulls out the tablet, and it looks like the Wii U gamepad. And
The Sheikah Stone.
I imagine the NX would have a similar look to it, or unless they just change that in the game, depending on what version you buy
Who
or
even
something like
knows?
that. The rumor is, of course, that the NX is going to be some sort of mobile thing where you can like take it with you. It's going to be like a combination of mobile gaming and console gaming. So I doubt it'll be more powerful.
I have no idea.
I doubt it'll be. If it is more powerful, I doubt it'll be significant. But we'll see. I have no idea. No idea what to expect from that.
So it looks really cool. I will play that game, obviously. I was going to play it no matter what, but I'm actually
I would not
interested
be
in it.
interested in the least if it was just like, here's Ocarina of Time
Well,
again.
Yeah, that's
Which
true.
I was legit. We were both legitimately afraid that it would be something like that, where it's just like, here's Zelda, but look, it's more open than usual, but it's still the same shit. That would be totally boring to me.
Yeah. Ocarina of Time
Thank God they
was
didn't
fine
do
for
that.
what it was. But, I mean, Majora's Mask on 3DS is... It perfected that. That's the best kind of 3D
A lot of people disagree with
story-driven
you.
Zelda that you can play.
A
Who?
lot of people don't like Majora's Mask.
What kind of piece of shit disagrees with me on
A
that?
lot of people just don't like that style
They're
of Zelda.
stupid.
Where
They're
it's-
bad people. They probably have wounded hearts and
I
need
kind of
to
agree with you.
jump
Yeah.
into a trash compactor. They also announced Rhythm Heaven Mega Mix and released it
Yep.
yesterday. So, 2 thumbs up to Nintendo. 1 thumb for Zelda, and 1 thumb for Mega Mix. Good job, guys.
Yeah.
Sony probably did have the best showing, but it does feel kind of sickening that you even start thinking in the terms of who won E3.
I've gotten so annoyed with that.
Yep.
Because really, when you think about it, I don't know. Did you see the Microsoft conference?
Nope.
If you watched the Microsoft conference, I was pretty impressed with it. I mean, it had a lot of stuff that I'm just not interested in, but considering that Sony was bogged down in the middle section with VR shit that, for the most part, other than Resident Evil apparently, was like, oh, the X-Wing mission for Battlefront, which is probably like a 10-minute thing. Just these experiences that aren't full games, which nobody cares about that. Like, I get why they're doing it, because it's something you can bring your friend over and show and say, like, look how cool VR is, but that's not selling me on it. Yeah, if you take that, Xbox didn't really have a down period to me. Like, Xbox had a much more consistent showing of, like, here's what we're doing, here's some exciting stuff. If you like Gears of War, here's Gears of War. Also, you can play it on the PC. Also, you can play it with your friends on cross platforms. The new Forza looks good that I care about, because I do like that. I like Forza. So yeah, I mean, I don't know. Sony had the most impressive as far as presentation goes, for sure. And they started out so strong with those 3 games back to back. That was like mind blowing.
Okay, somebody's saying something about a PC conference. Did anything happen there that we need to care about?
Nothing ever happens at that. There was one last year too, and it was the only thing that I haven't watched it, but the only thing that I heard about that I was interested in was Bannerlord, the new Mountain Blade game, which looks great. But
Okay.
other than that, yeah, that's a much smaller little. They organize it like a talk show. If you want cringe at your E3, that's the one to tune into. Not Ubisoft.
Tune into the PC Gamer Show or whatever.
Something about
pretty
the
bad.
money behind Ubisoft does make it a little more embarrassing, though.
Yeah, but
You can
so here's
understand
thing
the awkwardness
Here's the
of
thing
something
about
like a
Ubisoft.
PC show.
Ubisoft has reached the point where they're marketing off of their reputation.
Yeah, that's true.
And
We've
it's-
talked about this.
It's cringy for a different reason, and it's even worse. It's like, oh God, you're doing this. You're trying. You have the dancing giraffes and Queen because you know people are going to talk about it and say, "Ooh, look, it's Ubisoft."
They're so like cringe.
and
Guys,
yeah,
do you feel me?
trying.
Retweet this if Ubisoft was cringy.
Yeah, and when you try, that makes it like last year was their peak because when they interviewed the paid cosplayer and he talked like Captain Picard, that was unintentional, obviously, and amazing, but that was the peak. And now we're all downhill from here because now they've realized what they are and they're gonna try to make it a thing. I like Aisha Tyler. Seems like a fine person. Good for her. But yeah.
Okay, girl Wood. Peace. I can't even hear you. Are you alive? Are you making noise right now? You're muted. Well, guys, I guess that's the end of the podcast then. See ya. Here, go like this.